Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie. I'm a recovering addict, and today's topic I want to talk with you about is finding employment in recovery. I basically was unemployable because a lot of companies, although they say they don't discriminate, when you're a violent offender would be the best way to put it. When you're a violent offender, a lot of companies don't want to take a risk on you. So when you're in early recovery, they put a huge emphasis on being humble and just getting any job you can. The point is just to get a job, any job, to be very humble with what you're offered and to not worry about what you think like you're qualified to do. It's more about getting a job, keeping the job, maintaining your sobriety or staying sober throughout having a job. And in early recovery, that was always the emphasis, was to be humble. It doesn't matter what you did when you were on the street. It doesn't matter what you did before you got hooked on drugs. All that matters is you need a job and you need to take what is offered to you. Be very humble about it. If I was offered a job scrubbing toilets, if I was offered a job, I don't know, picking up shit at the zoo, I should take that job gladly because that's the job I'm being offered, and I need to start off from the very bottom and work my way up, was kind of the mindset. And I think being humble is never going to work against you. That's always going to be a quality that I strive to continue to work on, improving. That's a quality that's very important. And I think it was very important for me because I had a lot of entitlement issues. I just felt like I was special, you know, like, I don't know. I guess I felt like, not that any jobs were beneath me, but I felt like I wanted to be challenged in the job that I was in. So I think a huge reason they put that emphasis of be humble on addicts in the very beginning stages of their recovery is simply for the fact of addicts, at least for me, typically have a pretty bad track sheet, like as far as legal implications, as far as arrests. All that stuff is basically working against you when you're trying to find a job, because you go in and most all reputable companies that I interviewed for, they have on there that they're going to run a background check, and do you agree to it? Do you consent to it? And the background checks aren't free either. I think they were like $25 per background check. So you as the addict, my heart sunk every time I saw that on the application. It's just like, okay, here we go again. And then the other struggle was finding a way in the interview to answer the questions as honestly and openly as possible, but to not hide anything because they're going to run a background check. But I always felt conflicted at the end of the interview when they said, okay, we're going to run the background check and blah, 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 blah. And then I sort of have to say, do I want to tell them, what do I tell them now? So my strategy was, and I asked other people that went through this whole process, like other addicts, other people in meetings. I sort of asked them for guidance, counselors when I was in treatment, these sort of people. I would ask them, what would you recommend I say? And the recommendation was usually, don't rattle off every single crime you've ever been convicted of, but just pick like the most relevant 3 or the most recent 3. Admit to those, be open about it, and let them know you're in recovery. You're trying to turn your life around. You're turning over a new leaf, so on and so forth. So I would say that at the end of the interview, and I would just say, I just want to let you know that I have struggled with drug addiction and alcoholism, in my past, I'm clean now, I've been clean since, and then insert date there. I'm currently in recovery. I'm currently in the process of turning my life around. When you run my background check, you are going to find some offenses that I made when I was still in my active addiction, some DUIs, and assaults. I'm not going to make excuses for what I did. What I did was wrong, but I am trying to move on with my life, and I just want to let you know that I'm not hiding that from you, but that's where I'm sitting right now. Whenever I said that, I could just feel the energy shift. It went from like a positive, upbeat energy of, oh, I think this person will work out, or I think that they might give me a chance, a hopeful energy, and on their end, kind of an optimistic energy, to when I said that, it kind of, the energy, I always felt it shift, and I felt it shift to, okay, moving on. You know, they tell me basically the same type of thing every time. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for coming in. We'll call you and let you know. They never call. So, yeah. Yeah, so in the beginning, it felt like I was, still felt like I was doing the wrong thing. Everybody was telling me, be honest, tell them what's going on with your situation. But every time it came time to say something, my gut told me, don't say anything. Don't tell them about your past. Just see if you can get in the door, and then maybe they'll see how hardworking you are. They'll see how much value you bring to the position. And by the time they figure out that they shouldn't have hired you, or they wouldn't have hired you had they known about your history, by the time they figure that out, they're attached to you and they want to keep you because you're doing good work, you're providing a lot of value for the company. And so I found that a lot in my early recovery, whenever these times came to do the right thing, my instincts were telling me to do the wrong thing. And so I would force myself to do the right thing, to tell them the truth, to have those uncomfortable conversations that ultimately usually didn't pan out for me getting the job or doing whatever it was that I wanted to do, getting the outcome I wanted. Usually by doing the right thing, usually ended up getting the outcome I didn't want. And I think the reason that doing the right thing felt so foreign to me was just because I think it was just because of the sheer number of years that I was doing the wrong thing, that became sort of, that became my natural instinct, is to do the wrong thing. And I sort of was learning all over again how to live right, make good choices, do what is in my best interest and the best interest of others, even when my heart was still very self-centered, self-serving, and I naturally didn't want to do those things. I naturally still didn't want to be a humble person, a truthful person, a responsible person. All these things didn't resonate with me in early recovery. I just felt like always it was easier to do this, what I've always done, which is lie, cheat, manipulate to get what I want out of situations. And when it came time to turn all that around, I really fought that. I really fought that for a long time. And I think that's why it probably was so hard in the beginning to just get the basics down, really. So it was hard to get a basic job for a few reasons. One was I had criminal history on my record, so there was that. I had that I was not really very early in my recovery, so you wouldn't really look at me and consider me responsible or reliable. You would just look at my past history and see this person has a past of making really bad decisions, and this is going to be a high risk person to hire. And also, I had zero experience in any of the positions I was applying for, because in my past, before I got addicted to drugs, and even for quite a while I was still on drugs, I was, my main function was waitressing and serving alcohol, serving drinks, because that's what I got into when I was in college, and that's the job. Those are the type of jobs I always got. But when I got sober, I couldn't do that work, even though it might have been easier. It might have been a little easier for me to go in and interview for restaurants, waitress jobs, because they have such a high turnover, and also because I had years of experience in that. Even with my criminal history, they might have been more likely to want to hire me because I had experience in that. But the reason I couldn't go back to that was because when I tried to go back into it, I kept relapsing on alcohol. So it's like, to serve alcohol in early recovery was something I was not capable of doing. And I know every person is different, but for me, I decided that I no longer wanted to do that. And then I no longer wanted to put myself in the way of temptation. When I finally cleaned up and I wanted to permanently be clean, going back to waitressing and cocktail serving just wasn't an option, because I had a young baby. I was in early recovery. I knew from the past trying to be a sober cocktail server and waitress just didn't work out for me, even when I was way back trying to quit and back in the day. So it wasn't something that I wanted to pursue in my recovery. So that led me to apply to jobs like retail, telemarketing, door-to-door sales, and I had absolutely no experience in any of these, so that alone was going to be a little bit harder to do. So I ended up getting some jobs in those fields. I was hired as a telemarketer. I relapsed quite rapidly after getting that position. I felt absolutely miserable. I was in a halfway house. I needed the money more than anything, so I was willing to try it out. And I understand why they hire anybody, because that's probably one of the fastest turnover rates of any job, just because you're calling people, you have to read off this really boring spiel. They don't even let you put your own spin on it. They're literally just reading off a piece of paper. It was the most mind-numbingly dull job I ever had. And then on the other end, you're getting yelled at by these people that rightfully don't want you calling them. And I could empathize with the person on the other end of the line. I'm like, I don't even want to be calling you. This is ridiculous. I don't understand what I'm doing here. And that ultimately I wasn't able to stay clean doing that position. It was too much of a hostile type of work environment for me to be in, to be constantly being yelled at. I really couldn't handle that in my early recovery. So then I went on to door-to-door, and then telemarketing I would say would be cold sales. You're cold calling people. So after this, I went on to what I would call warm leads. So during this time, there was a storm that had passed sometime before, and the company was a roofing company, and I would go door to door and just let them know what we did, and we were offering free inspection. If they wanted me to send somebody out, I can send them out free of charge, give them a quote, let them know what their insurance will cover, what their insurance won't cover, and just let them know that a lot of the homes in this area, the insurance was fully covering the repairs, because the repairs were so bad from the storm, which is covered by most insurance. So that whole thing lasted for a while. Again, I relapsed. I had too much freedom in this job. It was me and another, I don't know if he was in recovery, but he definitely was using shit the whole time we were working. And I don't think I noticed in the beginning, but then by the time I started to notice, I wanted in on it. It was like, okay, if you're doing that, then let's go ahead and do this together. It'll be our little secret. And then so I went on to use, and still I was generating a decent amount of leads. I was generating enough leads to pay for my stay at the halfway house and to have a little extra spending money. But of course, I went back to using, and that never ends well. I remember my employer at the time had an intervention for me, and I just sort of laughed it off and said that they were being over dramatic, they were being crazy, I didn't have a problem, and then I proceeded to take my paycheck and get in the car with two other junkies that then we all just went to get high. So that was a disappointing time in my life. Another job I got in early recovery was retail. So a few retail stores hired me, and the first one closed within a week, so I could see why they hired me. They desperately needed anybody just to close out the store because people were quitting because the store was closing. So I got hired, and then 3 days later they let me know that the store was closing. But that ended up turning into another retail position because one of the other retailers basically let their employees know, hey, if you want to come interview for us, we know your store's closing, we know you have experience. And so that sort of worked in my favor. I just let the manager know at the new store, yes, I'm brand new, my current situation is such and such and such, I'm a new mother, I'm trying to get my life together, and if you take a chance on me, I will not disappoint you. So that's how I got my retail job, and I quickly realized that retail was something I did not enjoy at all, but I went ahead and stayed the course with the practicing humility, practicing gratitude, being very grateful that I even had a job, because really this was the most decent job I had had up until now in any of my recovery. Okay, sorry the angle keeps changing. I'm playing around with using a new mic, and so I keep stopping to make sure it's actually working and I'm not just talking endlessly and then there's no sound and I have to go back and edit it or reshoot the whole thing, which, yeah. So just bear with me as I learn how to use this. And anyway, so the retail job was the retail job was in an area of town that was had a lot of rich people, and for some reason, a lot of the people in this area, and I think they almost like got off on just belittling the lowly, like us lowly employees that were just retail workers, and they would just talk so badly to us if they didn't get their way, if they didn't get the price they wanted, if we didn't do exactly as they wished, even if it went against our company's guidelines and the rules. Like, when you work for a corporation, there's rules that you have to follow, and then there's rules that are, there's a little more gray area in there. So even when they were asking me to do something way outside of the gray area, that was a definite no. There's no way I can do this. I am so sorry. This is against our company policy. They would just get really, really hostile. And yeah, so the retail job, it had a lot of unhappy customers, but it was actually a good thing because this was a great time for me to practice all of these qualities that I was needing to learn. How to be humble, how to be grateful, how to keep my cool and not lose my job when everything in me just wants to blow up back at them. So I'm practicing good customer service. I'm practicing consistency. It taught me so much because I was also learning a new skill. I had never sold clothing. I'd never worked in any sort of realm of the fashion industry, and well, this was just a mall brand, so I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't high fashion. I was still learning a lot about being a retailer in the fashion industry on even just the smallest scale. And that's something that I have always loved. I've always loved fashion from a young age. I've always been kind of, I would even say I've been fashion obsessed from an early age. I always loved fashion. And so I was also getting sort of a look in the mirror at my own past self, because a lot of the customers would come in under the influence, very high on prescription painkillers, and I could see I could see them not as this crazed addict or this, I wasn't seeing them like, a lot of my coworkers would be very judgmental, like, oh, that person's so high, I can't believe they're in here like that. Or that person smells like weed so bad, they're stinking up the whole store. We got to get them out of here. And me, on the other hand, I'm thinking, why are they using? I bet they're going through a really hard time in their life. And I could see that they weren't happy, but they weren't hostile either. They didn't need to be treated like a leper, like treated like they weren't human. So I treated those customers just like I treated any other customer. I treated them well. I took care of them. I was just as helpful to them as I would be helpful to anybody else. I didn't treat them any different. I didn't treat them like, you need to get out of here. I didn't try to make them uncomfortable. The only customers I tried to make uncomfortable were the ones that were shoplifting, because they were like roaches. I was just trying to get rid of them. So it taught me a lot about the power of eye contact with people when you're making sales, the power of honesty. I wasn't going to lie to make a sale. I was going to be honest in my sales. I was going to tell them if I didn't think an outfit was working, how could we make it work that I think would work better? If I didn't think a garment flattered them, I would let them know in a kind way. I don't think that's exactly the right cut for you, or it's the most flattering fit or the most flattering color, but I think I have an idea of something that might work better. I started to find the value in being of service to others. I was in a service position. I was in a lowly position. But at the same time, I really started to enjoy the challenge of trying to sign people up for credit cards. This was when I believed that the credit card was a good thing. And I can't sell something I don't believe in. And after being there a while, I started to not really be a fan of the company, be a fan of the company in general, just because there was a lot of things that I didn't agree with about it. I started to notice that this really wasn't a very ethical brand, and it wasn't really a brand that I felt as strongly about. So if I didn't feel as strongly about the brand, I no longer wanted to push the credit cards for the brand, because it wasn't something I believed in anymore. But my coworkers, for the most part, were very nice to work with, and I learned a lot of new skills. And during this time, I took every extra free time I had to start figuring out this was not the job for me. I realized I was in a dead-end position. This job wasn't for me. This working in a physical retail location wasn't something that I believed in or something I wanted to do long term. So I started to look for a way out, plan my exit strategy, you could say. I started going to the library. I started going to like half off book sales and just devouring books about entrepreneurs, about people that started their own company, people that started their own business, starting a business from scratch, bootstrapping a business. Like, these are all the type of keywords I would type in. I think I would even type in like from recovery to small business, or from an addict to an entrepreneur, but those never really resulted in many searches. So then I started to just focus on just small business, how to turn a passion into a business, how to make money doing what I love. These are the type of things I started to search in the library, and I just started getting books and just reading them in any free time I had. And I found this to be very encouraging, because while I was going to a job that I didn't enjoy and it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. It was able to be more enjoyable because I felt like I'm planning a way out. You know, this is not the end. This is just my beginning. There's a reason I'm here. I'm going to be as great of a worker as I can while I'm here on the clock. And as soon as I'm off the clock, I'm going to be working on my escape, my like own thing, so that I can start to find what I really want to do and make that a thing. So then I started, keep in mind when I was using drugs and I was in the grips of my addiction, I was anti-technology. And I think we all know why. Camera phones, recording. I didn't want anybody catching me and having something on me. I felt like phones and technology were working against me when I was out there doing the wrong thing. I didn't want to be recorded. I just wanted to live a low profile lifestyle. And I was basically just living off the grid. You know, there was like no paperwork on me. There was no way to tell where I was at any given time. Only if you were running with me, you knew where I was and where to find me. And at the time, that's how I wanted it. I only wanted to be found by people that I was associating with, and only phones I had were throwaway phones. So I could just get rid of it and get another one. So when I say this to say, searching the internet was a foreign concept to me. I really hadn't gotten into the internet, and when I really had gotten away from the internet during my active addiction, so this was sort of like new territory for me to be going online and trying to see what was going on there. I started to see social media. I started to use Google all the time. This is when I would start typing in how to make money online, how to work from home, how to get extra money, how to build your own business, how to start a business from nothing, just all these type of things. And I finally started to discovered Amazon FBA. And as soon as I discovered Poshmark was the very first one I discovered. I discovered Poshmark, and so I started selling things that I already owned. I started selling them, and I was just a hobby seller, but I liked it. It kept me busy. It kept me doing something that I enjoyed. So this was like a little hobby I had on the side. Then before too long, I had sold through all of my clothing that I wanted to get rid of. So I started to go out with my son, who was very young at the time, maybe like 18 or 24 months old. And I started to look for things that I could sell on Poshmark that I could make money on the side. And so that's when it started to turn into a little bit of like a hobby, but a hobby that was now making money. So it started to make me money on the side. I was also working my job, and then slowly but surely Poshmark started to catch up with my job. Before too long, I discovered Amazon FBA, and I went full speed on that. As soon as I found out about Amazon FBA, which is fulfilled by Amazon, if you don't know, you can look that up, but basically it's anybody and everybody that wants to sign up for a seller's account, that wants to go scan merchandise, and then if you find something that you believe to be profitable, you have to analyze the ranking, the numbers, the data. It's all available. You just have to learn. It's like a skill you have to learn. So I went to the thrift store. I dedicated $400 of my, basically the like little chunk of change that I'm working at the resale store. I've decided to take that little bit of money and put $400 towards buying thrifting items, thrifting as many like new in the package items that I possibly could, or used electronics, that sort of thing, to send off to Amazon. And I was going to start FBA. But the main problem with this was when I decided to go out, and I went ahead and bought all the stuff. So I spent $400 and I had all this stuff in my garage. I was so excited. I was telling my husband I was going to do Amazon FBA. I was going to do Poshmark. This was going to be like a thing. And then the problem was I was restricted in so many categories and I didn't understand that right away. And also during the time I scanned all this stuff, they weren't allowing new sellers to sell toys, and there was like, to be a new seller in Q4, which is the busiest time of year, which I didn't know at the time, it was like a thing. Like Amazon's like, no, you can't start until January or whatever the date was, I don't remember. So I kind of put that on the back burner, and I just kind of kept all the stuff on stock. But then when the date hit that I could be an FBA seller, I sort of started scanning everything to send it into Amazon, and all of a sudden, like, these items weren't really, I started to notice either they weren't desirable, they were bad buys, or I was gated, meaning I couldn't sell these brands because I was still gated or restricted. So it became kind of a total nightmare, and I quickly discovered eBay. It was like, okay, well, Amazon is going to have to be checked off for now. I have all this stuff that I need to sell, and I can't sell it on Poshmark because Poshmark at the time was just women's clothing, shoes, and accessories. So then I started eBay, and I started to realize that I really enjoyed selling things on eBay, and I enjoyed selling things on Poshmark. And so slowly over the years, as the time went on, those little side jobs started to grow. And I remember being in the back of the retail store, like the back room on break, and a lot of times I would be scrolling, checking my phone. It got to the point where I needed to be checking my phone on my break because I needed to keep up with my customers that were asking me questions, and I didn't want to be ignoring people for 4 hours on end. So I would go back there and check on my break. And a lot of, I remember several times I would go and I would notice the dollar amount on my online accounts was over the dollar amount that I would earn at the retail. It was over the dollar amount that I would earn at the retail store working for an entire 2 weeks. Now, keep in mind, this isn't saying I was making tons of money, because at the retail store, I was only working very few hours. I was like, not their number one employee. I wasn't a bad employee, but they had so many workers, they could only give you so many hours if you were part-time. So I was very part-time because I was still mostly a stay-at-home parent, and I was doing that part-time in the evenings for just 3 or 4 hours, maybe 3 or 4 times a week at the most. But still, this showed me, okay, I think I want to start putting almost all of my energy to the online stores and start phasing my way out of the physical retail store. And so that was a huge turning point for me. Okay, so I feel like I've been babbling on for quite a while, and it's something that I enjoy talking about because it's something that I really finally found something I actually enjoy. So long story short, I no longer work for any physical company. I started my own company, and my company name is Goodie Stash, and I primarily sell used clothing, some new, but mostly I go out to estate sales, thrift stores, and I buy merchandise that other people no longer want or need, but that I see a value in it, and I can see making it into something, either upcycling it, selling it as is, cleaning it up. I can just see the value in it. So I take those items, I style them, and I put them on my Poshmark and my eBay store. And now I'm in the process of learning print on demand, which is also a new exciting thing that I've learned about. And print on demand allows me to design journals and put them on Amazon. It allows me to design blank cookbooks, which is something I'm working on right now. I've designed weekly calendars, and I'm learning Etsy. I've opened an Etsy store, but I'm brand new to the whole print on demand business model. But what my point is, or what my end goal is to transition my store from being only reseller to becoming more of like an upcycler, a crafter, a DIYer, and sort of upcycling some of these items into something more unique, but also taking my artistic side and starting to design digital products that can be printed POD, which is for the POD business model, which is print on demand. So I can design these products in my free time on the side while I still do my reselling, but this gives me something to work towards again. This is why being self-employed is something I enjoy so much, because like all those jobs before, I felt like I was a robot. I felt like I had something to offer. Felt like, you know, when I was on the street, I didn't have anybody telling me what to do. I didn't have anybody to sign my check. I didn't have anybody to say, you're hired. No, I just did. I went out and I did and experimented, and I found what worked for me. Although of course we know I was doing all the wrong things, and everything that was working was actually working against me in the long run. But there was a lot of things that I learned from being out on the street that transferred into owning my own business, opening my own business, and running my own business, because I was already very independent, kind of a free thinker, kind of a loner, I guess you could say. I love to be alone. I love to work alone. I don't feel lonely very often, but when I do, I have places that I can go to reach out. I shouldn't say I don't feel lonely very often. For the most part, I very much enjoy my alone time, but I do get lonely, but that's a whole nother topic. But the reason I feel like it's coming full circle, and I'm just in the very beginning of having my business. But I think that this was a topic I wanted to bring up, because if you're somebody that's in a job that even if you're not in recovery, if you're in a job that you don't enjoy and you just feel like your true calling is to do something else, like you have it in you to do something else, you don't feel happy in your job, you feel like you're in a dead-end job, you feel like a robot, you feel like you're just being told what to do and it doesn't really agree with your personality, you feel like you're capable of doing something different, you're capable of doing something that you truly love, I'm just wanting to encourage you to pursue that, even if you're pursuing it on the side, because I pursued my hobbies on the side for several years before it even clicked in my mind, this could be a job. I can make money doing this. And then once I started to discover that, it was almost like I caught fire. Like I had a fire in me, and I've just, every day I wake up, I'm excited to go to work. I'm excited to do what I have to do. I don't even feel like I'm working most of the time because I actually love what I do. Now, of course, there's things that I don't love. There's things in every job that you don't enjoy. I don't enjoy being on the computer for extended periods of time, but the thing that I wouldn't trade for anything is I have total freedom. If I want to take a vacation, I can take a vacation. If I want to pack it up for a week, I can. If I want to go to any of my son's school events, I can work my schedule around that. And the flexibility and the time freedom that comes from owning your own business is something that there isn't a job that could pay me enough to replace that feeling that I get from just being free to be myself, to do my own thing, to pursue my creativity. And it's just something that I never pictured that I would actually be able to do, but slowly but surely I'm finding ways to incorporate what I feel like are the strengths of my personality, my artistic side, my fashionable side, all these things that have always been of a strong interest to me. I'm able to take them and turn them into even just a fraction of my business and my my work life, so that brings that much more enjoyment to the whole thing. So yeah, I'm not going to keep rambling. I want to say that if I can do it, anybody can. If I can do it, and I had I really had zero experience in what I'm doing right now, and anybody can do it. If you're having a hard time finding a job, you feel like you're unemployable, just remember the internet doesn't discriminate, and you are employable. You are capable of finding a job. You are capable of doing something that you love. It is possible, and I would encourage you to stay positive, to not give up, to keep your head up, and just keep pushing through. And I wish you happiness, and I hope you find something that you love doing as well. So if you've I feel like that was really cheesy, but yeah, let's just go with it. So, okay, let's go ahead and end it for today. So if you've watched this long, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay strong, stay grateful, and stay positive.